Hey, this is Dennis, and welcome to another episode of the Grounded Reason podcast, where Joel and I discuss topics like cord cutting, saving money through technology, and pretty much just being an all-around citizen of the internet. Today, we're going to have some listener questions about the Air TV from last week's episode. Yeah. We'll get into a little bit of what Chairman Pai has done this week, or last week, actually, because he's done quite a bit already out the gate. But before we get into that, I wanted to kind of rally the troops here.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
Well, yeah, like today I commented actually at the FCC. Now, if you listen to our show, you know we bring up net neutrality quite often. And it's really the principle that your internet service provider can't block, throttle, or force one person to pay or company to pay more for the content that they provide over someone else. And it's basically the general rule is all content is created equal, and that way the ISPs can't pick winners and losers.
Yep.
Well, that's under fire right now through the current FCC. Chairman Pai just installed, was it 2 weeks ago, last week? 2 weeks?
Yes, 2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago. And, Trump appointed him, and it looks like they're about to try their damnedest to take down net neutrality. So
let me pause you right there for just a second. Just so everyone knows, like, what you're talking about when you say you commented at the FCC.
Yeah, I was going to.
Because that's a little bit inside.
Yeah, it is. And basically, the way it works is the rulemaking process at the FCC has a clause in it that every rule needs to be into the public interest.
Yep.
And in that vein, they open up every proceeding for public comment. Now, it's not a comment like on a website or like a forum. It's like on the record.
Yeah.
It
stays in the permanent record for
and
ever.
They're supposed to weigh these comments as a guide for public interest.
Yeah, for two different pieces. Like, one is how important is the policy in general, and then how should the policy be shaped?
Exactly. So I'm going to actually, it's real easy to do, and I'll link it in the show notes. But basically, you go to the FCC's Express Comment page, which I'll link, and the proceeding number for net neutrality is 14-28. So if you go into the proceeding field and you type 14-28, Open Internet will come up, which is net neutrality. It's the Open Internet rules.
Same idea.
So you click on that, you fill out all the required information, and then you put your comment in. And basically, I said that I would like to express my support for the Open Internet rules currently in place at the FCC. The Internet itself and the services that run on them are vastly different in nature and require different regulatory expertise. The Internet is a communications infrastructure that behaves as a utility. Therefore, Internet service providers like Comcast, AT&T, and Verizon currently and should continue to be regulated by the FCC as a Title II service. Products like Netflix, Facebook, and other applications are services delivered over the Internet. Therefore, they currently are and should continue to be regulated by the FTC as they are information services.
Yep.
It has been reported that the Trump administration is working on a plan to move consumer protection power over the internet service providers from the FCC to the FTC. Personally, I feel this is a bad plan, and the recent court rulings would leave the FTC unable to act on internet service providers when it comes to consumer protection violations. The current separation of duties between the FCC and the FTC must be maintained to guarantee a free and open internet. Now, you don't have to say all that. As a matter of fact, I would advise against it. Use your own words. Speak up to that. If you even went on there and said, I support net neutrality in its current implementation or something along those lines, that's fine. Say whatever you want, but say something, because it's really important to kind of, keep the internet free and open as it is today.
Yeah, and I wanted to make a quick point on this.
Sure.
So I think we might talk about this a little later, but so groups like the people who organized the Women's March or the Tea Party,
right,
couple election cycles ago, our ability, whether on the right or the left, is being threatened by the removal of current net neutrality standards.
Totally.
Right? Like, and so I know on the left, some of the people that organized the Women's March, like one of the people's names that's a big player in there is Winnie Wong, who's a political activist. But anyone who's in those circles, if you can reach out, comment, start getting other people within your communities to comment, it will make real headway.
Right.
And that, again, it goes for left or right. So if you're someone in the Tea Party or anything like that who wants to make sure that the internet stays in spirit the way it is now.
Yeah, because this is a populist issue.
This is a big deal.
This is not left or right.
No.
If you go and you look at polls and someone asks, do you support net neutrality? 83% of people say yes.
Yeah.
And it's because the alternative to net neutrality is letting your Comcasts and your AT&Ts and your Verizons decide what content gets shown or priority or, they're essentially controlling. They're going to be able to pick the winners. And when I say that, they're going to pick what happens on the internet.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the way we talked about it the other day was pretty good, where it's basically there's going to be a higher cover charge at the party. Mm-hmm. And because of that, it's just going to make the internet a less interesting party, right? Like we're going to end up with a more bland internet, and that's not going to serve any of us.
No.
The other thing that I think is a big concern, and it's, obviously Dennis and I both feel strongly about like checking corporate interest with this, but it's also, a check against governmental abuses.
Oh, totally.
Right? Like the more open and free the internet is, the more ability we have to organize and make our voices heard to the government, regardless of who the government is led by at that point, whether it be left or right. Right. So this is something that, should be, and I think is important to really all of us.
Yep. And I just wanted to start with that. Just to, please go out there, comment. I wrote an article on how to comment, how to have your voice heard at the FCC. I'll put that in the show notes. Share it. Get people involved because, it's pretty serious right now. Even if for selfish reasons, if you're a cord cutter, this should matter to you because it's really going to affect how what your internet price is.
Yeah, I was going to say it's going to punch us all right in the pocketbook.
Yep.
Right, and so like Dennis said, make a comment. In the rulemaking process, that's a great way. Call your congressman. Just make a general stink.
Seriously, So we'll probably touch on a little bit of FCC shenanigans later because we're entering, the era of net neutrality 2, Wrath of Pai. So,
God,
Pai.
The problem with that is anytime anyone references the Wrath of Khan,
right?
I think about that little wormy thing.
Oh, that's the worst. I do too. That affected me so much as a child.
Man.
Oh, it freaks me out. And like my kid has a leopard gecko, and I have to feed him mealworms. And every time I look at the mealworm, I think of that. Ugh.
That little wormy thing that went in Chekhov's ear.
Oh, it's horrible.
Can't deal with it, man.
It's the worst.
It was a great movie, though.
Oh, I love that.
Other than that,
yeah, except for that, I have to actually I'll be honest. I've fast forwarded through that scene before.
I just kind of looked away.
Yeah,
I look at my phone.
So we talked about the Air TV last week, and a lot of people were excited over this thing. So I got a couple of questions in regard to last week's episode that I wanted to address this week. The first one is from our friend Christopher. The Christopher.
The Christopher.
The Christopher. The Christopher is on point. He is on top of things. And he put this question in, I swear it was like early morning Monday after this podcast dropped.
That's how Chris rolls.
He does. He is on top of stuff.
I'm sorry, Christopher, not Chris.
Right. So he wanted to know if there's a DVR he can use with this thing. And currently...
Good question.
This is a great question. Currently, no, there isn't. But Sling TV, which is kind of like their own Sling TV and Air TV are both owned by Dish Network.
Right.
Sling TV is beta testing a cloud DVR. Now, it would be really cool, and I don't know if they're going to do this, to where, if you have if you're able to get a station, then maybe you could get the streaming equivalent. I'm sure you'd have to work out something. Like, for instance, if I can put my antenna up and grab NBC,
right,
and NBC has streaming affiliates out, like has their affiliate in that area streams, then I should be able to get that stream.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if they're going to be doing that or not, but I know certain networks you can already stream the local affiliates through Sling TV.
The thing I would guess with that, right, like, is it's a debatable topic whether you'll be able to do it right now.
Right.
But
eventually you should.
It's going that direction.
That's what I'm
hoping.
hoping.
What it sounds like.
Yeah. So once Sling TV, they're beta testing that right now, the cloud DVR, and then you'll be able to just, pick what you want to record in their cloud, and then you'll have it. Unfortunately, there isn't something like a Tableau or anything like that
Right.
kind of that's part of the Air TV. You'd have to buy. You'd have to,
buy it separate.
Exactly, and then you'd have to split the signal, and it's a whole bunch of hassle you don't want to deal with.
Yeah.
So, I wish I had better news, but the cloud DVR should be coming out soon.
Good question.
Oh, great question. And then James asked about a programming guide, because at CES, they unveiled a version that showed a programming guide that'll give you, a few days worth of programming.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, it didn't get released on with the initial launch. But I did contact them, and it's due out mid-February.
All right.
So an update, and then you don't have to do anything. It'll just your box will just update.
You're really talking a week or two.
Yeah. But this episode goes out on the 13th.
Well, yeah, today's the 8th.
Yeah, so the 13th, and then so maybe next week. I'm hoping. Yeah. So a couple days after you guys hear this, or if you've listened to this, 10 years from now, almost 10 years ago,
in the distant past.
Yeah. So and then Jim asked if multiple TVs can be used on one Air TV, and no, you're going to need to get a separate streaming device, no matter what it is. That's not just Air TV though. Like if you get a Roku, or you get, an Air, any, Amazon, you're going to have to get one for each TV that you want to run it on. Those were some of the big questions that I got last week. These were the ones where I've gotten multiple questions around these topics. But these guys were in first. So
there you go.
Some other, quick news this week. And it's early this week. This has been out for a while, but a bunch of people have been asking me about kids programming or free kids programming. And PBS Kids is now broadcasting over the air in a lot of areas. Like a whole lot of areas. So if you haven't fired up your antenna and done a channel scan, go ahead and do that. You might have free PBS Kids.
Yep.
And I recommend doing that anyway. Like every so often, just run a channel scan, because you don't know, they might have
more things pop up,
added a channel in your area, and you've been missing that sweet free TV.
Well, another thing I wanted to mention with this, just for anyone that has a Roku. PBS Kids has a free app there, so you can always grab it that way if you already have one.
Yep. So. And I know it's on Roku. I think a couple other devices as well. I'd have to look into it.
Yeah, I had to check, but I wouldn't be surprised if the Amazon Fire had it.
Yeah, just check for it. Because free is fun. Free is great.
Yeah,
I love free.
Yeah, and I mean PBS. That's the way they do things. They love to put out their content, for free.
Yeah, and watch all you can, because who knows how much longer PBS will be around.
Don't say that.
I know.
Like, my kids love Word Girl and Odd Squad.
Odd Squad. We went.
We saw Odd Squad live.
Oh,
we
that's
were
right.
there
That's
together.
right. We were both there together.
Yeah.
I forgot.
I mean, not.
We weren't sitting next to each other.
It wasn't just us. We had children. Our children. Not random children.
It was just Joel and
Our
Dennis. That's
children.
why we're lying. Our kids didn't even go. It was
I
just
had the little Odd Squad badge.
Yeah, Joel and I
awesome.
were just out there, and
is that weird?
Just the two of us.
For two 40-year-old men to go watch a live action kids program? No, we took our kids to the same program.
All right, Joel.
Whatever.
So, other news that hit, and this news hit a while ago, but it's kind of been confirmed now. Because I want to say it was probably about 5 months ago. Disney bought BAM Technology, which is they basically do. They do MLB TV. It's like they do a lot of different live streaming services. Last week at Disney's quarterly earnings call, Rob Iger, their CEO, said, "We will be launching a direct-to-consumer sports service sometime in calendar 2017."
That's a real big deal.
Yep. So ESPN is going to be, because they're owned by Disney.
Yeah.
So that sounds like
that's
ESPN
what
is going to be going live streaming.
It's not. They didn't use the initials, but that's what it sounds like.
Yeah.
And I mean, Disney's not dumb. They get that they have, like, you don't get that rich being dumb, right?
No,
they
know.
They realize that the bulk of what they have is content licensing and then, marketing rights off of it.
Well, ESPN's been losing subscribers hand over fist because of all the people cutting the cord. So it's been like Force Awakens came out and they should have been popping, they should have been swimming in their Scrooge McDuck bin of gold coins.
I've always wanted one of those.
I did too. But because ESPN's been like an albatross around their neck, they lost a ton of cash. So, it wasn't the celebratory year that, Disney did quite well. Don't worry. No one's hurt.
No one's
going hungry
for Disney, right?
They're getting they're getting the boar's head at the deli counter. They're getting the nice lunch meat. Boar's Head is national, isn't it? It's not some weird local Baltimore thing.
I don't know.
It's not like MIPS, is it?
I don't know, man. But either way,
it's the fine lunch meat in Baltimore. Boar's Head is the fine lunch meat.
That is the best lunch meat in town. And just so you know, that's when you got your bonus check. You just, it is Christmas dinner.
Honey, I am coming home with the Boar's Head oven roasted turkey this evening, and then
oh, that's a good one.
That's a promotion.
That
day.
Maple honey.
Oh, delicious. So anyway. What I was saying is that due to the losses at ESPN, they're through cable, the cable subscribers going down. I think that's probably what's prompting this move to streaming right now.
It makes a lot of
sense. They're waking up to
right?
it. Yeah. And also, I read an article today that Viacom they didn't say they're getting rid of any of their channels, but they're going to be concentrating heavily on 6 channels.
Really? I didn't hear this.
Yeah. So I think that means they're probably, because if I own a stable of TV channels and I'm going to plan on going to direct, I'm not carrying everybody along.
No, of course not.
I'm cutting some fat. So I have a feeling that this is kind of just winnowing down the lower quality stuff that they have.
Well, it's natural. Anytime a company does a transition from one business model to another,
right?
They, bail off as much as they can.
Yeah. So I wouldn't be shocked if you see more a la carte streaming options coming in the future. So good news all around for cord cutters. And speaking of cord cutters, I wrote, an article last week about the money people are saving when it comes to cord cutting. There was a study released back last year by a firm called CG42.
Yep.
And they show that on average, cord cutters save $104 per month. So over that's like $1,000 a year, over $1,000. It's like $1,200 a year more. If you multiply that by the number of cord cutters, which you can debate, I pin it somewhere around 10 million.
Yep.
You're talking about $1 billion a year.
Yeah, and that was what the journal article we were reading.
Yeah, like the journal mentioned that. I went and because like I read the Wall Street Journal article, and they pointed to this CG42 study, and I went and I read it, and they said because they had the numbers in there for the money that people saved, and they also said that overall 84% of cord cutters are happy with the decision to cut the cord, and less than 2% of those cord cutters plan on returning to pay TV anytime in the next year.
Another thing that was really interesting in the article is they talked about, cord cutters and, never got cable folks.
Right.
What did they refer to them
cord
as?
nevers is the
cord
word.
nevers.
Yeah.
That's the term of art.
I know. It's such a clunky.
Which I don't.
It's so clunky. Cord never. I mean,
it's weird. But whatever. That, right? Like people who never got cable. And I call
those people smart.
Right. Young. That's the other thing I call them. Young. But anyways, like they talked about them and basically like if you looked at it as two different populations, I think they said the one population was paying like around about $78 for the cord nevers.
Yep.
A month on average, and 83 for the cord cutters.
Yeah.
And my guess is some of that, again, I mean, I'm speculating, but some of it's probably generational in that, like, the cord cutters being more like your Xers or late millennials, were on cable at one point, so they watch more traditional television content.
So they're trying to kind of supplement a little bit here and there.
So they supplement a little more
because they feel they need to get that, like, I love the 80s in or something.
Yeah,
or
exactly.
whatever
it is.
Like that,
right?
some millennials
I gotta watch my Charles in Charge.
Right.
But the the cord nevers folks, right? I really thought it was interesting, the idea that, like, theirs is slightly lower, and the implication is they are gathering their entertainment in a different way, whether that be straight free from YouTube or I don't know, doing whatever else the heck young people do these days.
Well, I mean, YouTube has a lot of great, like, homegrown entertainment on it.
Yeah, that Batman versus Superman sketch you showed me the other day was hilarious.
Yeah. So there's like Gabby Dunn and Allison Raskin have the show called Just Between Us on YouTube. It's hysterical. I mean, it's like 5-minute shorts.
Yeah, but
it's a lot of fun.
I love that stuff. And the one I like is Epic Rap Battles of History.
Oh yeah, dude, that thing is huge.
Yeah, like, there's a lot of people that follow
they're like they have tons of subscribers, but I mean, there's a lot of talent behind that show too. I mean,
they had Snoop Dogg on. Like,
a
couple of, I mean, like, they get legit.
They're probably one of the biggest shows on YouTube.
They get big folks that come in on that show.
Yeah. So another really interesting thing that I saw in the study was, and I've heard a lot of like cord cutting naysayers. I mean, most of these people now are like industry folks.
Yeah, sure.
Or they're, kind of ignorant to cord
general
cutting.
Skeptics. And I get it, but I mean, like,
I'll read these articles where they'll sit there and they'll say, you can't save money at cord cutting because you have to buy this and you have to buy that and you got to get this service and that service. And I was like, the reason we're leaving cable is because the bundle is a waste of money. We're not going to sit there and buy all these channels. And this study kind of like bears that out because they said that people with cable TV already spend about $15 in streaming services, which makes sense to me because most people have Netflix.
Yeah.
And a good percentage of people have Amazon Prime. And I'm sure there's a bunch of crossover.
Yeah, they said even amongst the cord cutter community, 50% of people had and were using Amazon Prime.
Right.
So if you think about the broader population, that's a big deal.
And like a ridiculous percentage of people have Netflix.
Oh yeah.
Like it's like in the 70s,
really,
right?
really high.
Yeah. So if you already like that completely makes sense. So the naysayer argument is you have to buy all this stuff on top of it. Come to find out, the cost only goes up $5 per month on average when someone cuts the cord.
Sure.
So that's it. $5. So instead of the $15 average that everyone's paying, like all their cable subscribers are paying, cord cutters pay
For their
$20.
streaming
For their streaming service.
Yeah.
Cord cutters pay about $20 a month.
Yeah, well, because you pick up one, you
probably swap one in or out.
Well, my thinking is you probably go pay the extra bucks for the non or the pay service for Hulu and a couple other things, and that's about it.
Yeah, I mean that's what we did. And honestly, you get yourself like a solid, and I call these like back catalog services, like your Netflix or your Amazon Prime, and then a la carte the rest of the stuff from iTunes or Amazon. That and get an antenna, and then you're done. I mean, really, that will give you more than enough television to watch.
Oh yeah.
So yet another study showing that cord cutting is kind of the way to go if you want to save yourself some money.
What all of these listeners already know.
That's true. We're preaching to the choir here, but it's good to hear this stuff.
Yeah,
you want to make sure that you're not making a foolish decision.
That's everybody on the back.
Yeah, good job, guys. Good job out there. So now that we're done with all the sunshine and puppy dogs, back to Wrath of Pai.
This is bad.
Well, he did some stuff last week, and we're talking about our friend Chairman Ajit Pai of the FCC, which I'm trying to get the hashtag Bad Ajit going.
Oh,
because actually there is a good Ajit this week. There was one good Ajit last week.
Well, I don't think I heard about the
I didn't
good one this week.
No, he did push for more transparency at the FCC. So basically everything, and
it's not a bad thing. Yeah.
And to Wheeler's fault, Wheeler did do this. He would kind of not really announce things to the public until it was baked.
Well, that's and I can tell you because
I know why he did it.
Well, when I was go ahead.
Well, I mean, he did it because of, the
comment rules.
It's not just because you could still comment on it, but because the way that comments work is it opens up for comments and people can weigh in. But that whole rule, the rulemaking process there wasn't a lot of transparency to it.
Right. And
I think the reason that Wheeler did it this way is because he had a lot of, Pai's very vocal. Pai was, before he was chairman, he was still a commissioner on the FCC. And Congress at the time was hyper partisan. So I think that Wheeler was trying to keep things kind of camped down.
Yeah.
Because it was as the political environment, it would have just taken forever to get things done.
Well,
now I don't agree with that. Even though I agree with Wheeler's position, I don't necessarily think that's the right tact. And Pai wants to put everything out in the open, which I agree with.
Yeah.
So good Ajit.
Yeah.
But a lot of bad Ajit happened last week as well. And I want to get the hashtag Bad Ajit going on Twitter.
Let's
people.
do it.
So hashtag Bad Ajit, which I did this week and actually got a little love from.
Oh.
Yeah. So...
Cool.
Yeah, there's a lot of people on the Twitter feed that are following us and totally giving the FCC hell right now. Any article they can find, they're sitting there tweeting at Ajit.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like I said, man, if people make a general ruckus, it will sooner or later sway opinions, even if it just tamps down things some.
Well, ideas are contagious.
Yeah.
So, a lot of people who could be sitting at home and, typically this is nerd talk. I can't sit and talk with my wife about the goings on at the FCC.
Oh, I do.
Well, I could.
I do.
And she said, no, I do as well.
My
but
wife just yada yadas. Like, she goes to sleep normally while I'm doing it.
Right. Well, I mean, because, and also my wife, she's kind of like, this just isn't her issue. Yeah. It's like she's got other things that she's worried about.
Yep.
So, and other people are probably in that situation where they just don't really have a friend or a person that really even cares about this kind of stuff.
Right.
But, in a medium like this.
Yeah, there's a lot of us out there. We're just spread around.
Right. And, if you get out there and you say something online and somebody else hears it and it just kind of spreads. And then before you know it, you can talk like this. It's part of, actually, net neutrality was kind of like this back in 2015 when it was coming out. It was kind of, it bubbled to the top and a lot of people were talking about it.
Well, and so that was the thing I was going to tell you earlier is that when I was in school for, public policy, one of the gentlemen that was an adjunct professor there was, he was one of the guys who helped write the regulation for deregulating trucking, which doesn't sound like a big deal, but
I bet it is.
Well, yeah, I mean, it ended up popping according to studies, right? Like $1 trillion worth of economic activity.
That's another Title II thing. That's common carrier, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it might be. I know railroads are.
I think you're right.
Yeah. So,
but anyways, so one of the things he kind of, I think, accidentally taught us was that like the old school regulators were very much like, hey, we're going to get 5 of us in a room and we're going to hash this thing out. And we're going to come out with a way of doing this and plop it on the desk, and then we'll get comment from that. And that's kind of what Wheeler's style reminded me of. So the advantage, at least for all of us, with what Good Ajit is doing, is that we can see him coming a little better.
Yep.
Which is nice.
It's good. It's one of those things. It's like you're like, if you have somebody in there that you generally agree with, because Wheeler's way of doing it gets things done faster.
Yep. And if you luck into, someone who happens to be doing what you think is right, great.
Right.
But if not,
they're in trouble. Because if and I'm glad that Ajit is doing this transparency thing. Yeah. Because I would hate it
disagree with him on some stuff.
If Ajit was rolling like Wheeler, that would be a disaster.
Make me really nervous.
Right. So it looks like, at least, he did issue an order that everything needs to be out in the open when it comes to the rule-making process.
This is why we have a good Ajit and a bad Ajit.
Exactly. And I've heard Ajit. He's a smart guy, and I really do think that I think he's principled. Yeah. I just don't agree with his principles.
Yeah, I swear to you, I do not think he is a bad
Not at all.
person.
No, Bad Ajit's more of a joke. It's for us, it's Bad Ajit.
Yeah.
Right.
It's more of I think he is wrong-headed on a topic or two.
Correct.
I do not think he is a bad person.
No.
But Bad Ajit is a better hashtag than... I think he might be...
I agree with him
incorrect on, topic hashtag, right? Like, it's not gonna really work.
Yeah.
So anyways.
So last week, and this might seem like we're rehashing because we've talked about zero rating before, and
times.
Big deal. Well, first we said we had an episode on zero rating, and then we had an episode on I bet you zero rating is going to be a big deal with Ajit, and he's going to let it go. And now Ajit has.
Turns out
he did. So really, we're just kind of breaking the news on this is because we speculated about what was going to happen around zero rating. Now it's a truism. They have completely.
What was the actual phrasing they used?
They closed all of basically like the inquiry on it.
Yeah, and that's what really struck me as odd, right? Like it's not that, hey, like if they had come out with a position paper or public statements against, or just saying they didn't think it was an issue, I wouldn't be that upset. right? I'd say, well, I disagree, but whatever.
Why
But
would?
to
Because I think it's
stop-
kind of a big deal.
Well, but what I mean is to stop studying it.
Yeah,
is what
that's bad.
really bothers me.
Yeah.
Well, like to just shut down the intellectual like exercise of monitoring the data for what is the effect of this behavior is really the concerning part.
Yeah, well, I mean, you should listen to the 0 rating episode to get the full background on it. But I mean, briefly,
I listened to it.
why
I was
not
there.
you? I'm talking to them.
Oh,
So
I get confused.
I know. So, but the problem is, it sounds fantastic from a consumer standpoint.
Sure.
Because it's really
And in the very short run, it is for a subset of consumers.
right. Because basically, it's like if I am an internet service provider and I own a service that provides content, say, AT&T and DirecTV now, I can basically say if I have some sort of data plan, then if you use my service over my data plan, it does not affect you. Like,
Yeah,
it doesn't affect your daily. It doesn't go against your cap or your data plan.
But everything else does.
Right, and that's great if you're a consumer, but you wind up in a situation where, in the long term, it's basically a violation of net neutrality because you're picking a winner. You're sitting there saying only this service is free. Then why would I use any other service that I had to pay for?
It's going to choke out competition,
right? And that would be okay if there was a lot of competition in the ISP market, because
it's just not.
But then there's not. You have a handful of them, and it's the situation where the largest company is leaps and bounds ahead of number 2 in those situations.
Yeah.
And before you know it, you're just going to have one ISP, one like TV service, and not to mention we're all back in the bundle.
Right.
Because AT&T is testing a 5G right now, which we did an episode on as well.
Yeah.
It's basically, you're not going to need wires for internet. You're not going to need wires for internet anymore. You're just going to be able to get it wirelessly through 5G. So you have AT&T that owns internet over 5G. They have DirecTV now, and they have phone service. Hey, that sounds very familiar.
Yeah, and
it's a bundle, triple play.
Well, and the scary thing about it, they're clearly, at least, I think, and you think, they are the player to beat. Like, they are the most well positioned.
Oh, easily.
Right now.
AT&T is going to own. If it continues the way it's continuing,
yeah,
AT&T is going to be the new Comcast.
Well, and you think about it, like, why are we saying that? I'll give you an example. Verizon, who's a big dog, right?
I mean,
what are they missing?
They're number 2 in telecom.
But what are they missing?
They're missing
content.
They have their Go 90 thing,
right,
but that's kind of
amateur hour compared to DirecTV, right? And so Comcast, lots of content, not much in the way of wireless service.
I see a merger at some point.
Yeah, it's just who's left for Comcast, unless you're talking an AT&T Comcast merger.
That's crazy.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, that's way too much market share.
I could see Verizon. I could see Comcast purchasing Verizon,
or vice versa. I don't know, but either way, my point is, like, of the big 3, and leave Charter out there as hanging out as a 4th.
Well, that might be a good play for Verizon, actually.
It's not a bad play, right? Here's the thing, is just some general statistics. There are about 3,000 counties in the United States. Okay?
All right.
There are about 1,500 ISPs in the United States. Now, that sounds like, okay, well, that spreads out. It's not 1-to-1, but, it's one every, other. So how bad could that be? It gets much worse than that. And the reason being is much like what Dennis was saying earlier, is that the ones that have true coverage over everything is really the top couple players.
Right. And a lot of those ISPs are business-only ISPs.
Exactly. And most of those ISPs are extremely localized, and they're mostly localized on the coasts and, well, Texas. Right? So you take those and you say, okay, most of those you throw away. Right? And
no
where
one's
do you
buying internet service from? You're
a
not.
general consumer to watch television is not buying internet service through those folks. So you just don't end up with that many options. Again, like part of what regulators have been looking at with this industry that I think is wrongheaded is they think of it at a national level, and you really have to think at a more of a locality level.
Yeah, I mean, all you have to do is look at the statistics that say how many options do people have.
Yeah.
And the fact of the matter is, most people have one. You're lucky to have two.
Yeah. Or in our area, there are two.
You have two. We have two, and we live near DC.
Yeah, well,
which is a major metropolitan area.
Baltimore is a fairly large city.
Well, I mean, the Baltimore metro area, Baltimore, Washington metropolitan area is huge. And the fact that you really only have two providers, New York is not in a great situation either for internet.
No, not relative to their population.
No.
I mean, because you're talking in the greater DC, Baltimore area, there's probably 8 million people-ish.
Yep. There's some pockets that are really good. Provo, Utah is one.
Yeah.
And you know why? Because they tried to put in municipal internet, and they didn't do well with it. It did okay, but really what really helped them out is when Google came to town, they could say, hey, Google, we had this municipal internet that we tried, and it works, but it's still kind of a bit of a drain on,
all sorts of stuff.
The coffers, the citizens, like they're paying taxes for it.
Yeah.
Is kind of it was kind of a bear there the way they implemented it.
Yeah.
Not to say it would happen that way everywhere, but
it's just how they did it.
Right. So basically, Google, they gave it to them. They said, here, you can have this infrastructure and the debt. And Google took it on.
Yeah.
And that's how they got Google Fiber.
And guess
Provo,
what?
Utah. And so you got Google Fiber. There's another startup out there. I can't remember the name of it. But then there's also CenturyLink and I think Comcast. So they have 4 big players, and then there's a whole bunch of smaller startup players that are joining that market. There is a lot of good choices right now for ISPs there. Do you know what the average rate? And they have really good coverage. They have 95% people have internet. I think it's number 1 or 2 in the country.
Yeah.
And do you know what the average price of the internet, their monthly cost is?
No.
$29.
That's amazing. I mean, relative to everything else that is paid in all the localities in the U.S., that is very cheap.
It's super cheap, and their average speed is somewhere around
Google Fiber. It's going to be real fast.
It's a tad below 100 MIPS because Google Fiber is giving you 100 for 50.
Yeah,
out there, and Google's being undercut out there actually by some other providers.
So what this market reminds me of, in case I don't know if our users have picked this up, I'm a dork.
Oh, right. I think they know we both are.
Are you sure?
Anyways, our 5th episode in, we're supposed to talk about podcasts. We spent 40 minutes talking about horror.
Touche. So anyways, what this market reminds me of is the electricity market. And so you take where the federal government during the Depression invested very, very heavily federal funds for hydroelectric power.
Oh, yeah,
right?
The Tennessee Valley deal.
Pacific Northwest and Tennessee Valley, right? They have, or at least they used to. I think they still do, but correct me if I'm wrong, Internet, but I am pretty confident they still have some of the cheapest electricity in the United States. And part of that is not because, government run, or government established hydroelectric power is so much better than everything else. It's that it puts price competition immediately in the market, right? Like, so you at least have one other player
Right.
relative to whoever the other private provider is.
Right.
And that's all you really need for price competition. You need something else.
Right. Somebody that's not colluding.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you have
And
two
so
people that aren't colluding, you'll get the best bargain. You
Yeah,
just
and-
need it's like a reverse auction is really
Yeah.
what it is.
That's why I personally think a lot of our problems with the ISP markets could be solved with just big investment in municipal internet.
And to bring us back to why we went in this kind of market discussion really gets back to the zero rating issue of when you have kind of like these regional monopolies and then you have zero rating, it's kind of compounding that monopoly because now you not only do you have an ISP monopoly, but you have a content service monopoly.
Yeah.
And it's just going to get you into a spot where it's, you know, if you've cut the cord, you're probably going to have to wind up going back to a bundle
Yeah.
when it comes to 5G and internet streaming TV.
There's very little way around it.
No. So zero rating is really something that we really need to be on top of here and kind of, you know, if you're one to go out and file that comment with the FCC, might be worth a mention. And I know we've kind of spent a bit of time with this, but the problem with zero rating is it's so appealing on its surface.
Yeah.
And you really need to kind of dig into it a bit to understand what the long-term implications are going to be. And somebody like Ajit, who is Ajit Pai, the chairman Pai, who is really big on free markets and against regulation, they're really just looking at this as, oh, consumers will be happy. And really, he's not looking at the long-term effects of what this can do.
Yeah. And
or if he is, he's ignoring them.
And that is really where the disagreement lies.
Yeah.
Is like what's going to happen to the market long term versus short term.
Right.
That's it.
So that was one thing that, you know, we can attribute to Bad Ajit. The other one, which I don't understand at all, is, and we've talked about the Lifeline program before. A little background. It was a way for low-income folks to get a phone, you know, to get a phone line. And then it switched over to wireless. You know, they added something for wireless during the Obama administration. Now, the Lifeline program is something that, you know, people that weren't big fans of Obama love to kind of pick on.
Yeah.
Because, like, I've heard the term Obama phone. And it's because there has been a bit of fraud.
Well, and,
with it.
And what it really came down to was...
And not fraud from people, but fraud from companies.
Yeah.
Who are taking advantage of the program.
That's right.
I'm sorry. Is that where you
yeah, that was exactly...
I apologize for interrupting.
Great minds think alike.
So a lot of the fraud issues have been worked out because Wheeler was like, he tried to find companies left and right that were trying to take advantage of the program.
Yep.
And it's kind of smacked them down, and it doesn't happen as much as it did when the program first started.
I'm sure there's some.
I'm sure there's anytime someone's giving money away, there's going to be
always
fraud.
Someone who abuses it.
There's going to be. It's like without a doubt.
Yep.
Actually, not even giving money away, but anytime there is money,
yeah, there's fraud.
There's going to be fraud. Wheeler did his best. I mean, and he really, like, there was one story where, one of these companies defrauded the program by $10 million, and I think he slapped like a $50 million fine on him, which that's not usually how it works. Typically, a company will, have an egregious action, and then the fine is much smaller than the money they stole. So,
well, what he's trying to do there, or was trying to do, was make a cautionary tale out of someone.
So some of those issues have been worked out, but
what they wanted to do with Lifeline is now if you're out in rural America, there's plenty of places where you're just not getting good service options.
Oh, yeah.
Or you can't afford what is there. I mean, in the inner cities too, like you're just not able to afford internet access.
Yeah, I mean, the difference with the cities is you have a few more options.
You have some more options, so it might be a bit cheaper. To get some decent access out in rural America, you're gonna have to pay for it.
Yeah.
So they wanted to extend the Lifeline program to not only be for mobile phones and landlines, but for internet access.
Yeah, which sounds like a great idea.
And a bunch of companies signed on for it under Wheeler, but Bad Ajit, hashtag Bad Ajit, has basically taken the stance of the 9 companies that we were going to let do this, we've revoked it because we want to do investigation on fraud implications.
And if I remember correctly, he was, well, it might have been 2 chairmen, or 2 commissioners.
O'Reilly and him probably.
That published a white paper, I forget in what, but about the Lifeline project. I don't know, in 2014, does that sound right?
Yeah.
Basically making a very big stink over the fraud implications at the time.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's like his MO is usually like he's a small government guy, and he's not for government helping people directly in general, it seems. And he always tries to find that loophole to where he can kind of shut a program down without actually saying he disagrees with it.
Yeah,
and fraud, waste, and abuse is
a way to do it.
It's
hard to argue.
It's right? One of the ones that is used often when you want to shut down a program that pays benefits to people or gives benefits to people.
Well, and the problem is what they call in the post office, right? Like in the mail delivery, industry.
They still do that?
Yeah, it still exists.
Oh, okay.
It is the last mile problem, right? Like, so it's not that that hard to get to hubs. It's the last bit, right?
Oh yeah.
Like, so to get to, I don't know,
like Des Moines.
Yeah, it's not that big a deal,
right?
Or Sioux Falls,
right?
South Dakota, right? Like you get there, that's not that big a deal. But to get to the
airport, and
to get to the in this case,
I mean,
we're talking about
same thing though. I mean, it's
the same idea.
It's the same idea,
right? Like infrastructure, whether it be the actual lines for internet service.
Because when you put something like an airport in, or you put something like a power
plant, you could justify
the
cost
or anything. Yeah, because you're going to be servicing.
Because Sioux Falls is big enough to justify the cost.
Exactly.
But that last mile is very hard, and so the people that have historically been the best in the world at the last mile delivery piece has always been the U.S. Postal Service, because they have the mandate to get the last mile.
Yes, because they're forced to do it.
Yeah, they have to do it. And so, they're not anywhere near as competitive as, UPS and DHL and now Amazon with its deliveries and so on, with everything up until that. But, those other services have always struggled with the economics of getting that last mile to the 30% of the country, or I think it's 35, that's not urbanized.
Right. And that's why you bring up a good point, because the post office, I can't see it really ever going away, because Amazon utilizes the post office to hit some of those areas.
The last mile,
and
right.
so does FedEx and UPS. They do. They just drop it off at the post office and have the mail delivered.
I've got colleagues that work in Nevada, for example, and I don't know if you've ever been to Nevada. It's a beautiful place, but if you're not in Las Vegas or Reno, you're in a whole lot of nothing.
Yeah, it's
For a
desert out
long, and that's a big state. Like, we're a little itty bitty state. Nevada is not a small place. And so, like, there are communities out there. They're just not a lot of people in
Right.
those communities. So how do you get stuff, whether it be a package or
internet.
junk mail or internet
Right.
to them? Well, it gets difficult, right?
And
So
you can imagine that there's probably only maybe one that's going to get to them, and they're going to make that price as high as possible.
of course, well, it's not even. I mean, like, I don't even fault companies for making the price high. Like, it is just straight up expensive to do
Yeah,
that,
it is.
to get it there. So they have to charge a lot. But inherently in that is the fact that most people can't afford that price.
And that's what the Lifeline program
exactly
was intended to do. So if you want to find the fraud, waste, and abuse in something like a program like this, where you're really helping people that need it, why don't you do it while it's in flight?
Yeah, I'm not saying don't squeeze out the fraud.
No, definitely. But instead of trying to do it while the program was in motion, they're just shutting that program down to investigate and putting a stop on it.
Seems bonkers.
I don't get it at all, because you're doing more harm than the public you're doing more harm to the public than you would be reaping the good from finding the fraud.
Yeah. And I'm sure quite a lot of money could be spent on the studies on this, but the economic activity that comes from just having internet services to all of these areas is tremendous.
I'm going back to Utah. You need to look at what's going, because Salt Lake and both Provo, both have great competition out there. A lot of it has to do with Google coming to town.
Yeah.
A lot of it has to do with them. Utah just being, props to Utah. They're really smart on how to develop a city.
There is no, I will tell you, I've been around this country pretty extensively. There is no easier city in this country to navigate than Salt Lake City, Utah, because every single road in that city radiates out from the Mormon temple. Every single one. It's an actual, like, that's how they laid out the city.
Right. Yeah, so you can just look and you're like, okay, so you can always orient yourself.
Yeah, you can always orient yourself. Whereas cities that grew, like, organically over time, like Boston or New York, are like total madness, because they were, DC and Baltimore the same way, where it's, DC less. It was set out like by L'Enfant.
L'Enfant.
To be like Paris, but Baltimore, it's like it was a horse trail that eventually got paved over.
Right.
So the Salt Lake Cityers, I guess you would say, have always been very good with, like, and my uncle
urban
used
planning.
to live out there.
Yeah.
And they've just been very good with urban planning and thinking a little bit further ahead.
So, but getting back to your point on the economic activity that is generated from having, internet services. Utah's a great example, because it's been boomtown out there between Provo and Salt Lake. Their population has been booming. Their economy is like through the roof right now. What national unemployment? I think it just fell under 5. It's like 4.9. Do you know what it is in Provo? 2.3.
Yeah, which, from an economics perspective, that's
more than 50%. That's crazy.
Well, so there's this term, full employment, which is basically like everyone's employed to the point where there's just a little churn in the market.
Right.
And that's way above full employment. Like, full employment would normally be 4.5%.
Right. They're at 2.3 in Provo.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, so that tells me that
tight.
internet's important. And, the life, like, even for every citizen. So the Lifeline program, whether you might, I personally, I can afford internet, but I personally think the Lifeline program is great, because if
everyone in the area can get internet, then that helps me because the economy of my town, my city, or, my local neighborhood booms and is affected by people having access to the internet.
Well, and that's exactly right. Like the reality is those of us that live in the, more urbanized areas in the country are subsidizing things like the Lifeline program and so on. And that's fine by me. Like, subsidize them, bring them in the loop, right? Like them being able to interact with the internet, one, makes them more empowered citizens, which I fully support.
Correct. Yeah.
And then two, just generates more general economic activity, right? Like, so, like that overall helps my pocketbook, which I'm a general fan of.
Yeah. And I think this just gets down to a philosophical difference with Bad Ajit.
Yeah.
Because I personally feel that when people and consumers have money, the economy does well, the internet helps that along.
Yep.
And I think Bad Ajit thinks that if companies have lots of money, then everything's fine and the economy does well. And I guess it's really, what side do you come down on? Do you think that it's important for consumers to do consumers drive the market,
or do companies?
Or do companies drive the market? And I'm not gonna decide for you. I know how I feel about that.
Right.
But this has gotten a lot more political than I thought it would. but it's what it is.
It's the time we live in.
It really is. So on that note, I think I usually just blame it on the music, but I'm actually going to hit the button and play the music and say, this is Dennis, and we'll see you next time.
Take care, everyone.
I'm going to cut your take care, Joel.
No, you're not.
Yep.
I'm going to cut you.
It's getting cut. Oh. Usually we laugh that off, but that kind of hurt my feelings. Thanks for listening. If you have any questions or comments and want to contact the show, you can email us at podcast@groundedreason.com or just follow us on Twitter. The handle is @groundedreason. We're also on Facebook, and we have a phone number you can call if you want to leave a message. All the ways to contact us will be in the show notes. If you want to support the show, please subscribe. It's free, especially if you're on iTunes. If you want to go that extra mile, just leave us a 5-star review in iTunes. Again, thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.